I didn't find out my roommate was afraid of the dark in some dramatic way. No screaming, no nightmares, no childhood confession over beers. I found out because one night at around 1:40 a.m., Jason knocked on my bedroom door like he was about to confess to a crime. "Hey," he said quietly when I opened it. He was standing there barefoot, hair messed up, phone clutched in his hand like a lifeline. "Can I sit in here for a bit?" I blinked at him. Sure." He didn't look drunk, or high, or emotional, just uncomfortable, restless, like someone who didn't want to be alone with his own thoughts. That should have been my first clue. My name's Felix. I was 26 at the time, working a boring hybrid job I didn't love, renting a two-bedroom apartment because living alone in the city had become a luxury item. Jason moved in 3 months earlier, 24, grad student, quiet but not antisocial. The kind of guy who remembered to buy dish soap without being asked and apologized if he watched TV past 10. He was also very, very easy to look at, which I clocked immediately and then shoved into the mental box labeled "Do Not Touch." We weren't close. Friendly, comfortable, late-night kitchen talks sometimes. Occasional shared takeout. Nothing flirty, nothing weird. Until that night. Jason sat on the edge of my bed, elbows on his knees, staring at the floor. "You okay?" I asked. "Yeah," he said too fast. Then added, "I just can't sleep." I shrugged, trying to be casual. "Insomnia club. You want tea or something?" He hesitated. "Can I just stay for a minute? We don't even have to talk." That was weird, but not red flag weird. More like sad human at 2 a.m. weird. So I said yes. He stayed for 30 minutes. We talked about nothing classes, some podcast he liked, how rent prices were insane. He didn't look at me much, but his shoulders slowly dropped, like he was finally exhaling. When he left, he said, "Thanks. Sorry. I won't make this a thing." He did. The next night, same knock. Same hesitant look. "I know this is dumb," he said before I could ask, "but can I just lie down for a bit? I swear I won't fall asleep." I laughed. "You're not scared of me snoring or something, are you?" He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Something like that. That was the first night he lay on the bed instead of sitting. Fully clothed. On top of the covers. A careful distance between us. Like there was an invisible line he didn't want to cross. We talked longer that night. About his program. About how he hated silence. About how nighttime made his brain do things he couldn't control. "What kind of things?" I asked. He went quiet. "Just bad memories," he said eventually. "Stuff that feels louder when it's dark." I didn't push. By the third night, it was routine. By the fourth, he didn't knock. Just cracked the door and peeked in. "You still up?" "Yeah." "Cool." He'd started lying closer. Not touching, but close enough that I could feel his body heat through the sheets. Close enough that I was very aware of his breathing. I told myself it was nothing. He needed comfort. I was being nice. That's it. Then one night, he said it. "I've always been afraid of the dark." I turned my head toward him. "Really?" "Yeah." He laughed softly, embarrassed. "I know it's stupid. Grown man, scared of the dark." "It's not stupid," I said and meant it. He was quiet for a second. Then, almost joking, "When I was a kid, I used to crawl into my brother's bed and just talk until I fell asleep." Something about that landed wrong in my chest. "So," he added, voice careful, "this is just that? Just talking." "Right," I said. "Just talking." But when the lights were off and the room was dark, and Jason shifted closer until his arm brushed mine, I knew this wasn't going to stay simple for long. After that, it became unspoken. Jason would appear at my door sometime after midnight, always quiet, always careful, like he was afraid of breaking something fragile between us. Some nights he'd say a quick hey. Other nights he'd just slip in and shut the door behind him. We never turned the light on anymore. At first, I stayed rigid, hyper-aware of everything, where my hands were, how my breathing sounded, how close he was. I didn't want to make him uncomfortable. I didn't want anything. But the human body adjusts faster than the brain. After a week, my muscles stopped tensing when he lay beside me. After 2, I stopped pretending I didn't notice how good he smelled clean laundry and whatever soap he used. After 3, I started sleeping better on the nights he came in than on the ones he didn't. That part scared me more than it should have. One night, he spoke into the dark like he'd been holding it in all evening. "Do you ever feel like nighttime?" Is louder? Yeah, I said. Everything echoes. My brain does this thing, he continued. It takes memories and plays them back without asking. Like it knows I can't run anywhere. I stared at the ceiling. You don't have to tell me what they are. I know. He paused. But it helps knowing someone's there. Even if we're just lying here. Just lying here. That phrase became his shield. His permission slip. And I let him use it. Sometimes our conversations drifted into softer territory. Relationships, past crushes, dumb past experiences. He never asked directly if I was gay, but he didn't seem surprised when I mentioned an ex-boyfriend in passing. Oh, he said once, after a beat. Okay, okay. I repeated. He shrugged in the dark. Just good to know. I should have asked what that meant. I didn't. Instead, I noticed the small changes. The way his foot would brush mine and not move away. The way his breathing would sync with mine. The way he'd sometimes roll onto his side, facing me, close enough that I could feel the warmth of his chest through his shirt. One night, I woke up to find his hand gripping the fabric of my t-shirt. Not grabbing, not groping, just holding on like a kid afraid of falling out of bed. I didn't move. I lay there, heart pounding, staring into the dark, trying to decide whether this was comfort or something else entirely. In the morning, he acted normal, cheerful, even, made coffee, asked if I wanted toast. But there was a faint pink in his cheeks he couldn't hide. The line kept blurring. And then one night, he crossed it without realizing he was doing it. I hate when you're not here, he muttered, half asleep. I froze. What? When you travel, he said, voice thick with sleep. It's harder. The apartment feels wrong. I swallowed. Jason. He hummed in response, eyes still closed. I wanted to say his name again. Wanted to ask what he meant. Wanted to pull him closer and tell him he wasn't alone anymore. Instead, I whispered, I'm here. He shifted instinctively until his forehead rested against my shoulder. And just like that, my bed stopped feeling like mine. It felt like ours. I knew I should have stopped it, drew a boundary, sent it back to his room with a night light and a joke. But lying there, with his breath warm against my neck, I realized something terrifying. I wasn't just letting him stay because he was afraid of the dark. I was letting him stay because I didn't want to sleep alone anymore. The problem with blurred lines is that once you notice them, you start watching for every tiny shift. Like how Jason stopped wearing jeans to bed and started showing up in loose sweatpants. Or how he'd wait until I was already lying down before slipping under the covers, like he didn't want me to see him choosing it. Choosing me. We still didn't touch. Not really. But our bodies had learned each other's shapes, learned how to settle in without thinking. His back fit against my chest too easily when he turned over. My arm curved around his waist like it had always belonged there. One night, I caught myself tracing the seam of his t-shirt with my finger. I froze. So Dash, I said quickly, needing sound, any sound. What actually happens when you're alone in the dark? He didn't answer right away. His breathing stayed steady, but I could feel the tension snap back into his body. Sometimes, he said carefully, I just feel like I'm 12 again. Like I'm small. Like if I don't keep my eyes open, something bad will happen. I swallowed. Did something happen? Yes. That was all he gave me. After that, I stopped pretending this was casual. You don't crawl into someone's bed every night for weeks because of nothing. You don't let another person be the thing that keeps your memories quiet. And you definitely don't start timing your evenings around when they'll come knocking. The night it changed, there was a storm. Thunder rattled the windows, sharp and sudden. Rain hammered against the glass like it was trying to get inside. I was already half asleep when Jason practically stumbled into my room. He didn't say anything, just shut the door, crossed the room, and climbed into bed like he'd done it 1,000 times. Only this time, he didn't stop at his side. He pressed in me fully, forehead tucked under my chin, arms curling around my torso like he was afraid I'd disappear. I hesitated for maybe a second. Then I wrapped my arms around him. He let out a sound soft, broken that went straight through me. I'm sorry, he whispered. I know this is too much. It's okay. I said immediately. It's okay. You're okay. I didn't know who needed to hear that more, him or me. The thunder cracked again, louder this time, and Jason flinched hard enough that his knee knocked into mine. Without thinking, I tightened my hold. He melted into it. We stayed like that for a long time, just breathing. My chin rested on his hair. His fingers twisted into the back of my shirt. "This is stupid," he murmured after a while. "What is? How safe I feel right now." That didn't feel stupid to me. It felt terrifying, because safety turns into dependency if you're not careful. And dependency turns into heartbreak if it's one-sided. "Felix," he said quietly. "Yeah. Why are you doing this?" The honest answer rose up immediately. "Because I want you. Because I like the way you need me. Because I don't remember the last time I felt this close to someone." But I didn't say any of that. "I don't mind," I said instead. "And you don't have to be alone." He shifted back just enough to look up at me. Even in the dark, I could feel his eyes on my face. "You could have sent me back to my room," he said. "A lot of times." "Yeah," I admitted. "Why didn't you?" My heart hammered so loud I was sure he could hear it. "Because," I said slowly, choosing each word, "I don't think you're just afraid of the dark." He went very still. "And I don't think I'm just doing this to be nice." The silence stretched between us, heavy and electric. Outside, the rain softened. The thunder drifted farther away. Jason's hand slid up my chest, tentative, stopping just below my collarbone. He didn't touch skin, just rested there, waiting. "Can we keep talking?" he asked. I exhaled, relief and fear tangled together. "Yeah," I said. "We could talk." But as his head settled back against my shoulder, as his body relaxed into mine again, I knew the truth. Talking was no longer the reason he was here. And sooner or later, we were going to have to say out loud what we were both pretending not to feel. After that night, we stopped pretending this was accidental. Nothing was said outright, but everything shifted. Jason didn't frame his visits as not sleeping anymore. He'd show up already yawning, toothbrush in hand, like my room was just where he went at night now. Sometimes he'd say, "Bad day," and that was explanation enough. Other times, he wouldn't say anything at all. He'd just crawl in, turn onto his side, and press his back against my chest like he'd been holding that position all evening, waiting. The dark didn't scare him as much when I was there. That realization hit me one night when the power went out. The apartment dropped into complete darkness, no streetlight glow, no hum of electricity, nothing. The kind of dark that feels physical. I felt Jason tense immediately. "Hey," I murmured, tightening my arm around him. "I've got you." He took a shaky breath. "I know. That was new." He didn't say thanks. He didn't apologize. He didn't ask permission. He trusted it. We lay there listening to the rain and the distant sirens. His fingers laced through mine without either of us commenting on it. His thumb traced slow, unconscious circles against my knuckle. "You ever think about how weird this is?" he asked softly. "All the time," I admitted. "Does it bother you?" I hesitated. "Does it bother you?" He thought for a moment. "No, it just scares me in a different way." I knew exactly what he meant. Because fear changes shape when you start caring about someone. It stops being about the dark or the memories or being alone and starts being about losing the thing that makes you feel okay again. Jason rolled onto his side to face me. In the pitch black, I couldn't see his face, but I knew how close he was by the warmth of his breath. "Felix," he said quietly, like he was testing the sound of my name. "If this ever becomes too much, you'll tell me, right?" "Yes," I said without hesitation. Then added, "You too. I promise." His hand slid from mine to my chest, resting there like he was checking that I was real. That my heart was actually beating under his palm. It wasn't physical. Not yet. But it wasn't nothing. The next morning, we almost got caught. My alarm went off at 7. Jason jolted awake, eyes wide, like he'd forgotten where he was. "Oh shit," he whispered. "I didn't mean to dash." "You fell asleep," I said, half laughing. "Relax." He scrubbed a hand down his face. If anyone had seen Dash, no one did, I assured him. And even if they did, we're adults. He nodded, but his ears were bright red. Later that day, while we were both in the kitchen pretending everything was normal, he said casually, "I might get a nightlight." I raised an eyebrow. "You sure?" He smiled small, genuine. "Yeah, but I think I'll still come talk to you sometimes." Sometimes. That word stuck with me all day, because we both knew it wasn't true. That night, when he climbed into bed, he hesitated for the first time in weeks. I don't want you to think I'm using you, he said. I reached out, brushing my thumb over his wrist. I don't. How do you know? Because if you stop coming, I said honestly, I'd miss you. He looked at me, then really looked at me, and something fragile cracked open between us. He leaned forward slowly, giving me every chance to stop him. I didn't. His forehead rested against mine, our noses almost touching, breath mingling in the dark. We're still just talking, he whispered. I smiled, even though my heart was pounding. Yeah, I said, just talking. But when he stayed like that close, unmoving, present, I knew the next thing that happened between us wouldn't be an accident. And neither of us would pretend it was. The almost kiss haunted everything after that. We didn't talk about it. We also didn't undo it. Jason still came to my room every night. Still slid under the covers like that was where he belonged. But now there was a carefulness to him, like he was aware of every inch between us, like crossing it would change something permanently. Which of course it would. One night, we lay on our backs, shoulders touching, staring into the dark. Can I ask you something kind of selfish? He said. Sure. If I wasn't scared of the dark, he continued slowly, do you think we'd still be doing this? I didn't answer right away. The question deserved honesty. I said, we'd have found another excuse. He let out a breath that sounded suspiciously like a laugh. Yeah, I think so too. That was the first time we acknowledged it, the thing sitting between us, unspoken but very real. After that, the conversations got deeper. Less about classes and work, more about us. About how Jason had never really let anyone see him when he was scared. About how I'd gotten good at being the steady one because it meant I didn't have to ask for help myself. You're very calm, he told me once. I'm very practiced, I corrected. He rolled onto his side, propping his head up on his hand. Do you ever get tired of being the safe one? The question caught me off guard. Sometimes, I admitted, but not with you. His expression softened in a way that made my chest ache. That night, he reached for me first. Just my hand, fingers threading through mine, deliberate and warm. I squeezed back. Neither of us said anything. From then on, closeness became normal. Small, quiet gestures. His knee resting near mine, my thumb brushing his wrist, his head leaning against my shoulder instead of hovering nearby. Still nothing overt. Still nothing you could point to and say that's it. But it was intimacy, the kind that sneaks up on you and rewires things without asking. One evening, I came home late. Jason wasn't there. I didn't realize how much I'd started depending on his presence until I lay alone in my bed, staring at the ceiling, waiting for a knock that didn't come. When he finally did almost 2 hours later, I sat up immediately. Everything okay? I asked. Yeah, he said, but his voice was off. Can I come in? He didn't get into bed right away. He stood there, hands shoved into his hoodie pockets, shifting his weight. I almost didn't come, he said. My stomach dropped. Why? Because if I keep doing this, he said quietly, I don't think I can pretend it's just about the dark anymore. The room felt smaller. And if it's not just about the dark, he continued, eyes flicking up to meet mine, then I need to know where this is going, or I'm going to freak out and ruin it. I swallowed. Okay. He took a breath. Okay. Okay. I repeated. We talk about it. He nodded, relief washing over his face. So we sat, on opposite sides of the bed, like two people trying very hard not to scare each other. I like you, he said finally, more than I planned to. I smiled softly. Same. And I don't know what that means yet, he added. But I know I don't want to lose this. I reached out, resting my hand over his. You're not going to. He leaned into that touch like he'd been waiting all night. Later, when we lay down again, he curled against me more confidently than ever before. I'm still scared of the dark, he murmured. I know. But now, he said, pressing his forehead to my chest, I think I'm more scared of mornings. I ran my fingers through his hair, slow and gentle. Then we'll figure out mornings too. He sighed, content and heavy against me. And for the first time since this all began, the dark didn't feel like the thing we were hiding from. It felt like the place where we were finally being honest. Once we named it, even vaguely, everything sped up and slowed down at the same time. Jason didn't stop coming to my bed, but now there was intention in it. He didn't hesitate in the doorway anymore. He'd shut the door, cross the room, and climbing like it was the most natural thing in the world. And somehow, that scared him less than pretending. We started talking before sleep instead of after, about stupid things, about real ones, about what it would mean if this stopped being contained in nighttime. What happens if this works? He asked one night. I smiled into the dark. That's usually when people get scared. Yeah, he admitted. That tracks. He was quieter after that, more thoughtful, like he was checking his emotions against reality, making sure they weren't just born out of fear and proximity. I worried he'd pull away. Instead, he leaned in. One night, he shifted closer than usual, his thigh draped fully over mine. His hand rested on my stomach, fingers splayed, warm through my shirt. You okay? He asked softly. Yeah, I said, voice steady despite the way my pulse jumped. You? Yeah. A pause. Just want me closer. That was it. No excuse. No fear. Just want. I slid my arm around him, pulling him in until his chest pressed against mine. He fit there like he'd been measuring the space for weeks. We stayed like that for a long time, breathing each other in. Felix, he murmured. Can I kiss you? The question landed gently. No pressure. No urgency. I tilted my head slightly, giving him room. Yes. He didn't rush it. He leaned in slowly, forehead brushing mine first, then his nose, like he was making sure I was still there. When his lips finally met mine, it was soft, almost hesitant, like he was afraid the dark might shatter if he moved too fast. I kissed him back just as carefully. It wasn't fireworks. It wasn't desperate. It was warm and grounding and real in a way that made my chest ache. He pulled back first, searching my face even though he couldn't really see it. Still okay? He asked. I smiled. Still very okay. That seemed to unlock something. The kisses came easier after that, still slow, still gentle, but less uncertain. His hand slid up my side, fingers curling into the fabric of my shirt. Mine traced the line of his jaw, then settled at the back of his neck. He sighed into my mouth. That sound did things to me. I tried very hard not to rush. We stopped before it went any further. Not because we had to, but because neither of us wanted to cross into something we couldn't uncross without talking first. Jason rested his forehead against my collarbone, breathing unevenly. Thank you, he said quietly. For what? For not taking more than I'm ready to give. I kissed his hair. We're not going anywhere. That night, he fell asleep faster than I'd ever seen him, and he didn't flinch once. The next morning was awkward in a new way. Not embarrassed, just aware. He lingered in the doorway before leaving for class. So, tonight, I grinned. Tonight. He smiled back, softer than usual, and left. I spent the day thinking about how far we'd come from just talking, and how, somehow, the thing that started in the dark was beginning to feel like something we could carry into the light. But first, we still had nights to get through, and Jason still wasn't ready to sleep alone. The funny thing was, once we kissed, the dark stopped being the main problem. Mornings took its place. Jason didn't pull away, but he got quieter during the day, more thoughtful, like he was replaying everything in his head, checking it for cracks. At night, though, when he came into my room, the tension eased off him almost immediately. It told me everything I needed to know. One evening, he showed up earlier than usual, not past midnight, closer to 10. He hovered in the doorway, backpack still slung over one shoulder. Am I allowed to come in even if I'm not scared yet? He asked, half joking. I smiled. You don't need an excuse anymore. He nodded, like that answer mattered more than he expected. We lay there talking about nothing for a while, the lights still on. He traced lazy patterns on my arm, distracted, thoughtful. Do you think, he said slowly, that I made this worse for myself? I frowned. Ow! Like, what if I'm only okay because of you now? He looked at me. What if I can't sleep alone again? I considered that, then answered honestly. Maybe you don't need to force yourself back there right away. He blinked. What do you mean? I said gently, fear doesn't go away because you shame it. It goes away because you feel safe long enough to realize you don't need it anymore. He stared at the ceiling, processing. So you're saying, he said, I'm not broken? I turned onto my side to face him. No, I'm saying you're healing. And healing's messy. That did it. He rolled toward me and pressed his face into my chest, arms wrapping around me like he'd been holding that question in for years. I held him without hesitation. "I don't want to lose this," he said quietly. "You're not going to," I repeated again and again until his breathing slowed. That night, he slept all the way through. No flinching, no restless shifting, just steady, calm breathing against my shoulder. In the morning, he didn't jump up right away. He stayed, curled into me, eyes half open. "This feels dangerous," he murmured. "Why?" "Because I could get used to it." I smiled into his hair. "Me too." A few days later, he tried sleeping in his own room. He didn't announce it, just didn't show up. I lay there, awake, staring at the door, pretending I wasn't waiting. Around 2 a.m., I heard open. He stood there for a second, silhouetted in the dark. "I made it an hour," he said apologetically. I sat up and held the covers open. "Come here." He didn't hesitate. As he settled in beside me, he let out a long breath. "I'm not failing, right?" "No," I said. "You're trying." He nodded, eyes closing almost immediately. And that was when I realized something important. Jason wasn't using me as a crutch anymore. He was choosing me. And I, somewhere between late-night conversations and quiet kisses and learning the shape of his fear, I had already chosen him back. The dark still came every night. It just didn't feel so empty anymore. It didn't end all at once. It ended the way most real things do, quietly, in pieces, without a clear moment where you can say this is it. Jason started sleeping in his own room more often after that. Not every night, but enough that it felt intentional instead of avoidant. Some nights, he'd make it all the way through. Others, he'd show up around 3, eyes heavy, voice soft. "Can I?" he'd ask. And I'd always say yes. But something had changed. When he came in now, it wasn't panic that brought him. It was comfort, choice, want. One night, after a week of him successfully sleeping alone, he knocked on my door before midnight. "I'm not scared," he said immediately, like he needed me to know that. I smiled. "Okay, I just miss you." That did something to my chest I wasn't prepared for. We lay together, fully awake, talking about stupid future things, vacations we'd never taken, apartments we couldn't afford yet, the possibility of getting a dog someday. It felt normal, domestic, real in a way that scared me more than the dark ever had. "I think I'm okay now," he said eventually. "With the dark?" I asked. He shook his head slightly. "With being alone." I didn't respond right away. Just listened to his breathing, felt the steady warmth of him beside me. "Does that mean," I asked carefully, "you won't come in here anymore?" He turned onto his side, facing me. Even in the low light, I could see the seriousness in his expression. "No," he said. "It means when I come in here, it won't be because I'm afraid." He leaned in and kissed me slow, certain, unhesitating. "This," he said softly, "is what I want, not what I need to survive. What I actually want." I pulled him closer, forehead resting against his. "Good," I said, "because that's the only version I was ever hoping for." That was the last night he slept in my bed out of fear. But it wasn't the last night he slept there. Weeks later, when we finally moved his stuff into my room for real, no excuses, no late-night knocks, no pretending, it felt strangely anticlimactic. Like the story had already been written in the dark, and we were just catching up in the light. Sometimes, when we lie in bed now, Jason will laugh and say, "You know, this all started because I was scared of the dark." And I'll tell him the truth. "No," I'll say, "it started because you were brave enough to ask someone to stay." He doesn't need the lights on anymore. But some nights, he still reaches for my hand in the dark. And I still let him. Because what began as just talking turned into choosing each other over and over again. And that's the kind of love that doesn't disappear when the lights go out.